My name is Mark, and this is the story of the most terrifying night of my life. My girlfriend Sarah and I decided to rent a beach house for a week. It was supposed to be a romantic getaway, a chance to relax and enjoy the ocean. The house was beautiful, with large windows overlooking the sea and a cozy little porch where we could watch the sunset. At first, everything was perfect. We spent our days on the beach, swimming and sunbathing, and our nights at local beach bars, enjoying drinks and music. But there was something strange about the house. We always felt like someone was watching us. Sarah noticed it first, but I felt it too. Sometimes when we were in bed at night, I would hear faint noises like footsteps or whispers coming from somewhere inside the house. I tried to ignore it, telling myself it was just the sound of the wind or the house settling. One night, after a fun evening at a beach bar, we came back to the house feeling a bit tipsy and happy. As soon as we stepped inside, we knew something was wrong. The air felt colder, and the whole place seemed different. The lights flickered, and the furniture looked slightly out of place. We both stood there, frozen in fear. Then we heard it. A loud, unmistakable sound of someone trying to open the back door. We looked at each other, eyes wide with terror. I told Sarah to call the cops. She fumbled with her phone, hands shaking, and dialed 911. I grabbed a baseball bat from the closet, trying to look brave even though I was terrified. We locked ourselves in the bedroom, listening as the doorknob rattled and the sound of footsteps grew louder. She managed to call 911, and the officers were on their way. The noises outside the door stopped suddenly, and everything went eerily quiet. We could hear our own heavy breathing, the tension thick in the air. Minutes felt like hours as we waited, every creak and groan of the house making us jump. Finally, we heard the sound of sirens. The intruder must have heard them too, because we heard a window break and then silence. The police arrived and searched the house and the surrounding area, but found no one. They took our statements and assured us they would patrol the area for the rest of the night. After the police left, Sarah and I sat on the bed, holding each other tightly. The sense of being watched never went away, and we knew we couldn't stay there another night. We packed our bags and left that haunted beach house before sunrise, driving straight home. To this day, we don't know who or what was watching us in that house. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, I still hear those faint footsteps and whispers in my dreams. And every time we talk about that vacation, Sarah and I both get chills, remembering the feeling of being watched and the terror of that night. We haven't been back to the beach since. My name is Ryan, and this is the story of the most horrifying night of my life. My friend Mike was hosting a huge house party, and it seemed like everyone from our college was there. The music was loud, people were dancing and laughing, and the house was packed with over 100 people. It was supposed to be a night of fun and celebration, but it turned into a nightmare. I was enjoying myself, talking with friends, and having a few drinks. After a while, I needed to use the bathroom, so I made my way through the crowded living room and down the hall. The bathroom on the first floor was occupied, so I headed upstairs to find another one. As I climbed the stairs, I noticed it was quieter up there. The noise from the party faded, replaced by an eerie stillness. I found the bathroom and went inside. While I was washing my hands, I suddenly heard a blood-curdling scream coming from down the hall. My heart raced as I quickly dried my hands and stepped out of the bathroom. I followed the sound, feeling a sense of dread growing with each step. When I reached the end of the hall, I saw a door slightly ajar. The screams were louder now, mixed with sounds of struggle and pain. I pushed the door open and froze. Inside the room, there was a tall, dark figure standing over two people who were covered in blood. He was holding a large, gleaming blade, and his eyes glowed with a terrifying intensity. The victims on the floor were Mike and his girlfriend, Emily. They were barely conscious, blood pooling around them. The intruder turned his head and looked straight at me. His face was twisted in a sinister smile, and he raised the blade as if to come after me next. Panic surged through me, and I stumbled backward, nearly falling as I ran back down the hall and also screamed as hard as I could. I raced down the stairs, nearly tripping in my haste. I burst into the crowded living room, screaming for help. The music stopped abruptly, and people turned to look at me, confusion and concern on their faces. I basically told them that there's someone upstairs with a knife and that Emily and Sam were hurt badly. Panic spread through the crowd as people realized what I was saying. Someone called 911, and a few brave souls ran upstairs to check on Mike and Emily. I stayed downstairs, my legs shaking and my heart pounding in my chest. The police arrived within minutes, but it felt like an eternity. They rushed upstairs and I could hear them shouting orders and searching the house. The paramedics arrived soon after, and they carried Mike and Emily out on stretchers. Both of them were still alive, but they were in bad shape. The police searched the house and the surrounding area, but found no sign of the intruder. It was like he had vanished into thin air. They took my statement and the statements of a few others who had gone upstairs with me, but there wasn't much to go on. That night haunted me for a long time. I couldn't get the image of that dark figure with the blade out of my mind. I couldn't shake the feeling of his eyes on me, that sinister smile, and the sheer terror of seeing my friends hurt like that. Sam and Emily eventually recovered, but none of us were ever the same. We couldn't understand why this happened or who the intruder was. It was a mystery that hung over us, a shadow that never really went away. And every time I think about that night, I feel that same cold dread, knowing that the man with the blade is still out there somewhere. My name is Jake, and this is the story of the most terrifying night of my life. My parents and I decided to go on a camping trip for our vacation. We found a beautiful spot deep in the woods, far from the city. It was perfect: tall trees, a clear river, and no one else around. We spent the day setting up our tent, fishing, and roasting marshmallows over the campfire. As night fell, the forest became eerily quiet. We sat around the fire, telling stories and enjoying the crackling flames. The stars above were brighter than I'd ever seen. It felt peaceful, like we were the only people in the world. Suddenly, we heard the sound of a car engine. It was strange because we were so far from any roads. My dad stood up, looking towards the direction of the noise. The headlights cut through the darkness as a car slowly approached our campsite. The car stopped a short distance from our tent, and two men got out. They looked rough, their faces shadowed by the firelight. Each of them held a long, gleaming knife. My heart began to race, and I could see the fear in my parents' eyes. My dad stepped in front of my mom and me, trying to shield us. The men advanced, their expressions cold and menacing. They were here for more than just a chat. My mom clutched my hand tightly, and I could feel her shaking. My dad reached for his pocket, probably for his wallet, but I could see the look in his eyes. He was thinking of a way to get us out of this alive. He whispered something to me, urging me to run to the car and lock myself inside. Before I could move, the men lunged forward. My dad swung a branch from the fire, trying to fend them off. One of the men slashed at him, cutting his arm. My mom screamed, and I felt frozen in place, my legs like lead. She pushed me towards the car, and I stumbled, then ran as fast as I could. I heard the sounds of struggle behind me, my parents shouting, the men grunting, the sickening thud of fists hitting flesh. I reached the car and jumped inside, locking the doors. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the keys. Through the windshield, I saw one of the men standing over my dad, his knife raised. My mom was on the ground, clutching her side. I fumbled with the keys, my vision blurred by tears. I had to do something. I couldn't just sit there. I honked the horn, hoping to scare them off or draw attention from anyone nearby. The man turned towards the car, his eyes wild and angry. He started towards me, but then we heard sirens in the distance. Someone must have heard the commotion and called the police. The men looked at each other, then ran back to their car and sped off into the night. I unlocked the car and rushed to my parents. My dad was bleeding badly, but he was conscious. My mom was hurt, but able to stand. I hugged them both tightly, tears streaming down my face. The police arrived quickly and took our statements. They searched the area, but couldn't find the men. An ambulance came and took my parents to the hospital. They both recovered, but the scars from that night never really healed. We never went camping again. The woods, once a place of peace and beauty, now held only fear and darkness for us. And every time I hear a car engine in the night, my heart races, and I remember the terror of that night in the forest.